All right, buckle up because you're not going to believe the circus I just lived through. Picture this, a sheriff's cruiser pulling into my driveway, lights, flashing the whole 9 yards, all because one HOA. Karen thought she could bulldoze her way over a guy with a rusty truck and a bigger claim to the land than she could ever imagine. You know that feeling when you see karma roll in wearing a badge? Yeah, that happened. But let me back up a sec because the real show started about 20 minutes before when I was just out on my dock enjoying my coffee, fixing up a few loose boards. You could hear the echo off Eagle Lake, the water like glass. That's when she came barreling up in a white Lexus tires, screaming, smelling like Chanel and burning rubber. She nearly took my mailbox off the post before storming up my porch in heels that probably cost more than my F-150. You've got 10 minutes to get your junk out. This is HOA property now. Priscilla Veneer in full peacock mode, waving her phone like a judge's gavel. I put down my hammer and just smiled because I know something she doesn't. My family's owned this slice of paradise since 1952, but she wasn't having it. Next thing I know, she's got 911 on speed dial. There's a vagrant destroying lakefront property, lady, please. Red and blue lights started flashing through the pines. I almost felt bad, because she had no clue she was about to call the cops on someone with a bigger deed than her husband's ego. So what would you do if some HOA psycho tried to steal your family legacy? Seriously, I want to know. Drop your worst neighbor horror story in the comments, because I bet it can't top this. Now, my name's Thaddeus Brennan Thad to anyone who matters, and I'm a third-gen owner of this patch of Eagle Lake. My granddad cut these cedar logs with his own hands back in '52. On humid mornings, you still get that smell sweet wood old coffee, a hint of last night's campfire. I spent 30 years working oil rigs in the Gulf hurricanes, busted equipment, the kind of job where you learn quick to keep your head on a swivel and your savings in your back pocket. When Dad passed last year, the cabin came to me. My retreat. My one place on earth where I could actually breathe. I'm not flashy. My truck's older than most people's kids. My idea of fine dining is a base over a fire pit. Eagle Lake was always a working man's haven until the suit showed up. About 5 years ago, the luxury crowd started buying up shoreline taxes, shot through the roof. And next thing you know, the Lakeside Estates HOA springs up like poison ivy. And running the whole show, Priscilla Veneer, Dallas transplant professional pearl clutcher and self-appointed queen bee. Her husband owns the company building all those McMansions, so she just waltzed in and started giving orders, tennis racket nowhere in sight. My wake-up call came on a perfect Tuesday morning. I got back from town with a box of screws for dock repairs, and there it was, neon orange violation zip-tied to my pier. Unauthorized structure. Non-compliant landscaping. $500 daily fine. 30 days to comply or face aggressive legal action. Yeah, sure. Now, if you've ever gotten one of these, you know the feeling my blood pressure nearly punched a hole in my hat. I called Dolores at County Records. She's known my family since Eisenhower. She whispered, "Thad, your property's been on file since '52. This HOA stuff came out of nowhere. Something's fishy." Being a reasonable man, I decided to talk it out. I drove to Priscilla's McMansion, which looked like Vegas married a wedding cake, and she answered the door in a silk robe at 2 in the afternoon, looking at me like I tracked mud on her carpet. "Listen, vagrant," she sneered, "this is a premium community now. Wouldn't even talk." Threatened to call the cops for harassment and slammed the door. I stood there staring at her Roman columns and plastic petunias thinking, "Lady, you just poked the wrong bear." 3 days later, she called an emergency HOA board meeting. Spoiler alert, the board was her husband and 2 developer wives. They voted to expedite my removal, and within hours I got a letter from some bottom-feeder lawyer demanding I vacate within 72 hours or face immediate asset forfeiture. My hands shook, but not from fear, just pure red-hot rage. After 30 years dodging death on oil rigs, I'm not scared of a Karen in tennis whites. So I drove straight to the courthouse. Dolores, God bless her, pulled out the old records and pointed out something wild. The HOA's boundaries had magically expanded overnight. Homes like mine, built before the HOA ever existed, were suddenly included. And the kicker, forged signatures everywhere. They were trying to redraw the map and crown themselves kings of land they never owned. I called Marcus old rig buddy turned paralegal. He laughed so hard I thought he'd choke. Thad, they just handed you a golden ticket. They've got no rights over your land. That afternoon, Marcus filed a motion freezing all their threats. For the first time in days, I slept easy. Priscilla, she didn't take it well. Next morning, she shows up with 2 security guards, dudes built like linebackers, but with that look in their eyes like, are we really supposed to be here? She's screaming about pathetic losers and HOA authority. I stayed calm. Ma'am, this is private land, has been for 70 years. These guys are trespassing. The muscle exchanged nervous glances and backed off fast. That's when Floyd, my neighbor Korean war vet and tougher than old boots, appeared arms crossed. Priscilla turned on him too. You're next, old man Floyd just said. Lady, I've been shot at by scarier folks than you. Good luck! That's when the crowd started gathering phones out, recording every word. The moment was delicious. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, her own illegal dock, her unpermitted gazebo, you name it. Marcus always said, documentation beats accusation. Priscilla's next genius move, posting a meltdown on the local Facebook group thinking she'd turn the town against me. Instead, people rallied behind my family sharing stories about my granddad helping neighbors during tough times and started asking questions about HOA money. After that, it got wild. One morning, Priscilla rolled up with a sweaty inspector who looked like he'd been chased by dogs. They started measuring my dock. I told them, unless you've got a warrant, this is trespassing and it's all on camera. Called the county for an official inspection. Dave Morrison showed up real pro. He spent an hour, shook my hand, and told me my granddad's cabin exceeds every modern code by 50%. Randy, the fake inspector, disappeared like fog at sunrise. Did that stop her? Of course not. A week later, a utility crew showed up to disconnect my power on Priscilla's orders. I handed them a 1952 contract. They radioed and apologized and told me that crazy lady's been calling everyone electric water fire department. File for harassment. Good advice. And then jackpot in the courthouse basement at midnight, I found plat maps showing the lake bed belonged to the county, not the HOA. Even better, Floyd's drone caught Priscilla's mansion encroaching on protected wetlands. Marcus laughed so hard he spilled coffee. EPA fines can hit 50 grand a day. The next twist, our ragtag resistance. Floyd called us the Old Eagle Lake Liberation Front, met at the VFW. 12 families, horror stories, galore, fines for garden gnomes, threats for parking work trucks, all targeting folks who didn't fit Priscilla's idea of a country club. She actually stormed into the meeting, waving her arms, and Floyd kicked her out in front of everyone. Now, if you think that's the climax, you don't know Priscilla. Her nuclear meltdown hit at dawn, showed up screaming, "He's destroying community property." Called 911. Deputy Rodriguez, who grew up with my cousin, shows up, checks my paperwork, and tells her flat out, "Ma'am, this is his land." Priscilla nearly fainted. She started recording, shouting corruption on her phone, only to end up with half the county watching her own insanity online. The news picked up the HOA Karen calls 911 on Hammer Story. The county charged her with harassment. That's when Marcus Dolores and I uncovered the real ace. My great-granddad's 1890s mining claim had never been transferred. My family owned not just the cabin, but the entire lake bed, including mineral rights. Legally, every mansion, every dock, every development was built on land we still controlled. We pulled together a dream team: environmental lawyers, forensic accountants, veterans with enough documentation to wallpaper the courthouse. Priscilla's husband's company had been funneling HOA money into offshore accounts, bribing officials, cooking the books so bad they made Enron look honest. And as it turned out, Priscilla tried to bribe County Commissioner Pete with a paper bag full of cash and a diner full of witnesses. Pete had been recording her the whole time. Priscilla's last gasp, filing a restraining order claiming I was running a paramilitary group out of my fishing shack. Judge Morrison, who grew up on the lake, took about 5 minutes to throw it out right after Floyd explained the militia meeting was actually a barbecue for Mrs. Patterson's birthday. The final showdown was cinematic. County commission meeting, cameras everywhere, room packed. Our lawyer rolled out documents proving the entire HOA was built on stolen land. Priscilla, red-faced, tried to protest, but the sheriff walked in with arrest warrants for fraud, conspiracy, and bribery. Handcuffs snapped on like music. The crowd cheered. And then I announced I was deeding my land rights to the county with permanent protection for local families and a ban on HOA harassment forever. 6 months later, Eagle Lake was thriving. The HOA nightmare was over. The McMansion got bulldozed. Families were back to grilling, fishing, and fighting about whose turn it was to host the potluck. Floyd's granddaughter got the first Brennan Family Veteran Scholarship to study environmental law. Priscilla, community service, and banned from running any HOA ever. So what's the real win? Not the legal victory, not even seeing Priscilla's mugshot on the evening news. It's waking up to coffee on my dock, neighbors waving, laughter drifting over clean water, knowing we took our community back from the bullies. Now I gotta ask, what would you have done if it were your family's land? Ever tangled with an HOA or a nightmare neighbor? Drop your wildest stories in the comments, because justice isn't some fancy legal term, it's a team sport. And if you ever need backup against the next Karen, you know where to find me.